Okay, the common denominator that I heard in the first story, which was a song, was the loss of the lover. In other words, it was transferred. In the second story, I also heard loss and some of them don't make it.
Okay. So sometimes I come in as the moderator, and usually if you do a group of 5, you get one person to do the moderating who does not come in too much with their own but tries to. So apparently there's a topic of dealing with loss. Could we say that? Okay, all right. Dealing with loss, yes? And you address it to Mary.
Mary, I heard movement. Movement. Nothing was still. It was a thing, everything was moving in it. Dancing and the penguins marching.
Okay. Any other common denominators?
So related to the idea of loss, there's a thought of identity of being a loser. So that in the first song, the person's losing their lover. In the second, in the movie, there are people losing, or penguins in this case, losing their life and sort of failing at life.
Piggybacking on that, there's also the paradox of the opposite. You could be the one who is the winner of the new lover, and you could be the one who, and some of them do make it.
Okay, that's a therapeutic intervention, and that's my role as moderator to limit those. They're only comments about common similarities. It's very hard for us as therapists to get away from that, for me too. There's also the element of movement. Both of them have a lot of movement in the dancing, and the penguins are marching. Okay. Anyway, one of the things that's very useful now all over again for you to read this first story and the last story all over again, because we heard the first time we heard it, we didn't know what we were listening for. And now you know what you're listening for. So you're listening for common denominators, but you're also listening, I'm adding another one, for exact opposites, for contrast, which are also very important. So the first one is slow.
I was dancing with my partner to the Tennessee Waltz when an old friend I happened to see. I introduced her to my darling, and while they were dancing, my friend stole my darling from me.
Okay. And now your last one, I'm going to ask you to read it, but leave out your personal reactions in the last one. So we're going to censor a little bit. You're just giving us the text.
All through the movie, as the penguins migrate, the voiceover narrator says, and some of them don't make it, and the camera focuses on the dead carcasses.
Okay? Yeah.
Mary, I heard a contrast of being personally participating as the dancer in partnership, and in the second one, observing outside of it, observing what's going on.
Mm-hmm. That's very important, observing what's going on.
Yeah, the second time I felt it was more of a disassociation of both stories, of that you was a part. It was not participating, it was, you stepped away from it. You know?
I don't understand. If somebody sometimes, or if you don't understand, you can say something, or else somebody else. I don't understand what you mean exactly. I'm not getting it.
It was as if it disassociated the story. It was like the narration was the story about a story.
Oh, I see. That's the common denominator, that in both cases, let's see if we get that. In both cases, there's an observer again. It's a little like Ken's point.
Yeah.
In both stories, where's the observer in I Was Dancing? It's
It's about a song. So it's about,
Oh, very good. It's outside the self.
Yeah.
Both of them are outside the self.
Yeah,
That
that's
it
the
is described
disassociation,
outside
yeah.
the self. And this one is also outside the self. All right. So, very important that important information is occurring outside the self. All right? Any more?
In the first one, there's life. Nobody dies. In the second one, it seems like the focus is on the death and dying.
May I correct it to the focus of the observer is on death, not necessarily the focus
Right.
of what's going on, but the observer focuses on the death. What's the ending of the first one again? What's the last line of the first one?
While they were dancing, my friend stole my darling from me.
Oh, all right. So, while having fun, something bad happens. Or in the first one, and in the last one, while going about their business, the penguins or whatever, going on, something bad happens. Right after some important event is going on, something bad happens. At the very end, something bad happens. We're clear, we don't want to pretty them up at all. Our job, we're not therapists, so we do not want to make it sound good.
Yes, Mary, what I heard was in the first one, life going on, and in the second one, death.
Yeah. However, in the first one also, her thing was her loved one was stolen from her, so that's still loss. I mean, death, okay. There's still a negative ending. Don't try to pretty up. There is an observer and there's a little bit outside the self, but it's a negative ending. Okay. However, there is a lot of life going on in the process. So the positive is it's very exciting in both ones. There's dancing, the movement. So there's life, very, very rich life going on with crash, as seen by the outside, not necessarily from the inside. It may be that the one who was dancing has had so much fun with the dancing that it's okay to lose, and it may be the penguins have had so much fun that they die, however the observer sees it. However, from the outside, it's not good. It's not good to see somebody having lost something, and it's not good to see a carcass. Okay, so that, we put that in. Okay, any more? Because now we're ready for the adolescent one. Yeah?
Well, I
The
had
one more.
another one more was temperature-wise in the dancing scene, there's warmth, and in the other one, it's Arctic, cold.
Very good, because we also want to see the contrasts, which I was asking, and we're giving an important contrast. The first one, life is warm and fun, and the second one, life is process in the cold, but it's cold life. And the first one is warm life. Okay, as it's going on. Okay, and now let's hear the adolescent one before I give you ideas about what it stands for. Approximately the age. Approximately.
21?
Yeah.
20,
So it's
21?
an older adolescent. It's either younger or older. See, when I really have the luxury, I go with 4 and 5 stories, and it's really very exciting. But we're doing a condensed version.
This is also a song from a film. Come Saturday morning, I'm going away with my friend. Will Saturday spend, just I and my friend, to the end of the day? And then we'll move on, but we will remember long after Saturday's gone.
Aha. Now, common denominators and differences with both stories.
You want similarities? Or
Similarities first.
Well,
I call them common denominators. Okay,
yeah,
whatever. Similarities is a better
there
word.
is connectedness as partnership among the penguins, among the two in the adolescence story, and among the dancers.
In all of them, there is
A partnership.
partnership, relationship,
Being together
and
relationship.
a warm relationship. In all of them, the relationship is warm.
Warm.
Right? Even with the cold penguins, they're together, yeah. Okay? Any more? Wayne, you had one, or you're just handing the mic? You may contribute also, you know.
Yeah, another common theme is the sadness or the loss. The common denominator is sadness or loss. Again, it's a very similar story.
That's the common denominator. Do you see a contrast?
Are you asking for a contrast or a common?
No, I'm asking for, just so you tell
Okay,
me which is
another
which.
common one I see is movement. I mean,
Yeah.
even in the adolescents, you have movement through time from one spot to another.
Yeah.
There's movement in time.
No, I'm asking you to think both of common and contrast, but then to identify that this is the common and this is the contrast.
A contrast that I see between the first song and the second song is, in the first song, it's almost immediate that the partners are changed. In the second, you spend all Saturday morning together, and you have very fond memories of spending that time together in the song.
Do you want to hear this last one again? Yes, let's hear the last one again. I mean, it's the third one. It's the adolescent one. Yeah.
Come Saturday morning, I'm going away with my friend. Will Saturday spend, just I and my friend, till the end of the day. And then we'll move on, but we will remember long after Saturday's gone.
So,
The contrast is beautifully around the lingering memory stays, whereas in the others there's loss.
yeah, in this one there is gain, actually.
Yeah.
Because whatever else has happened, this has been gained. This is there and can't be taken away. In the first story, the friend is taken, or the lover, or whoever it is, the partner is taken away. In the last story, there is death, so again, the companionship is taken away. In the adolescent story, it can't be taken away. Whatever else happens, it's going to be there. And in this story, there is a gain, a very strong gain of a special kind, whatever happens. It's dealing with this early script view of loss, of being taken away. And with script view continues into grown up, of the expectation of a final loss. But in the adolescent version, it says, even if there is a loss, it's a gain. Can't be taken away. Oh, the adolescent. Now, I need to tell you, just in order to give you a bit of theory, it's very interesting. Usually, I'm talking now I'm talking about numbers rather than individuals, but since we have such short time, and since I am encouraging you to work with this script work, but please never, 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 I hope I'm giving you very strong, never in just individually. And don't try too hard by yourselves either. You can, if you've worked with it a bit, to play with it afterwards, like this, or you may have, because that's different. Because you've got, but don't go with one or two people, because really it can be actually harmful sometimes, or, not good, not good. And if you get 5 people, even if there are 5 disturbed people, even if there are 5 people in a therapy group, or 5 whatever, as long as there's a monitor who makes sure that people are not pushing too hard their idea or their suggestion or and insisting on it or hammering and so on. I mean, somebody has to be a little bit watchful of the group, not of her, but of the group. So she watches for herself, but of the group, so that they don't make her life very difficult. As long as that happens, it can be a very good and productive, not it can be, I know it is, because I've had incredible feedback over the years. Okay, so now, just to give you the theory though, I can tell you it almost never misses, and this has absolutely been amazing to me, the common denominators between the first and the third story, and the last story. The baby story, 4-year-old child, and this grown person. And the story has so many elements that are similar. But of course, there are elements, but there is a line. The Germans call a red thread. Yeah, there's an expression in German, I don't know whether we have it in English too, a red thread that goes through. The adolescent story has some of these themes, but usually is a very, sometimes people get scared by their adolescent story because it's sometimes almost nightmarish sometimes. It can have murder and amputation and all kinds of stuff. But this have to be understood symbolically. Whenever you hear these things with murder and law and so on, you have to understand them symbolically. We're talking about, nevertheless, an image of the self moving through life. We're not talking about prophecy. We're talking about how the child starts out imagining life, imagining the self moving on, the positives and negatives. The adolescent story checks it out. The adolescent story goes and, as I said, sometimes is violent, but the violence sometimes represent throwing away some bad ideas or whatever, saying a little bit like an editor in a script film, you know, oh, these takes, they were all there and so on, they look good, but no, we won't use them. Gone, finished, they refer to. As I said, when we have 5 more stories, I have a story in the middle between adolescence and the early, and usually this is a very adapted story, which is fun because it ties in with a person's relationship to their parents and their childhood and how they thought they should be, but not how they really are. So I skip it because it's not that, it's fascinating, but it's not that pertinent to the script. It's just pertinent to the person, how the person was raised and how they thought around 8 in the latency stage of how they thought they might be able to manage in life. But so that's a separate exercise which we can do another time. So here we have the adolescent story. As always, remember, adolescence is a form of rebellion. Rebellion even against the negative too. So here you have an original view of negative. You have the original view of things are good, and you know, one can, if we happen to have heard from you this image of you feeling that something terrible can happen and loss. Look how parallel it is. We happen to know that. We're not supposed to. I'm doing something illegal now. I'm not supposed to associate to what you told us about imagining something final and something terrible and so on. But certainly it's coming, the child's fantasy here. I mean, I'm doing what I don't recommend, but you get this first story, dancing and happy and Tennessee Waltz and everything, and then something gets taken away in some awful way, and so it's nullified. And then that theme continues, unfortunately or fortunately or whatever, with a view of life, of when things are going well, it's dangerous and it can end badly. And it sounds as though that is a view, and we need to understand our life philosophy. You know, it's not a matter of then therapists walking in and saying, you know, I'll get you to throw that out. This is there. But we see the adolescents going at it and doing what a therapist can never dream of doing, and saying, hey, you know, just a moment, it's not going to be taken away from me, in that story. So in terms of technique now, the next technique is to ask you how you relate to these, how you relate to what we've been saying, and usually to ask you which story will you prefer, whether the last one or the adolescent. Something, you know, it makes a difference without even being influenced by which story do you prefer?
I prefer the March of the Penguins with the little addendum that I made that most of
Okay,
them...
take it, yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I prefer the story about the March of the Penguins, thinking of it as most of them make it, and feeling, I like the fact that the life goes on and that the species continues.
So that your adolescent story has come in to tell you, even though I see the idea that there can be death and end and whatever, if I'm looking at it from what I know, from my experience, meaning Mary, my experience, things can go bad. However,
for the most part, it turns out all right.
it turns out all right.
Continues.
And nobody can take it away from me.
Right.
Very strong, very strong. Very, very strong there, which then comes into the fourth story. Don't be afraid of of people showing negative things in there, of loss and everything, because, you know, that's a part of the way we view. I mean, we view the future, that this can happen. I mean, children experience loss and everything else, and they may need to integrate that into their story. You know, otherwise they're just developing rackets and not living. Okay, Mary, now your turn. Do you want to tell people what you like, you don't like, or nothing? You say tell us or don't tell us, whatever you want.
I liked it because you all gave me different ways to look at it. I've known for a long time that the Tennessee Waltz was my favorite childhood song, and I always wondered, gee, is that going to be a self-fulfilling prophecy? I certainly hope not. But the adolescent one, I just really identified with that song for some reason, and it wasn't related to what was going into in my life. Although I thought it was, nobody else saw it. And
you thought what?
I thought that was definitely me. You know, I identified with it totally, but no one else did. No one else that knew me. So, and that's what I like to do that now. I like to check out with people, even if they're not TA people. Now, when we were talking, did you get at that too? No, you know, or whatever, because a lot of times I do interject a lot of stuff that isn't there. And for the third story, after this, I ended up going to Antarctica, and I saw the penguins, and when we were ashore, sometimes they may have been dead, but they also could have just been sleeping, and I did see the carcasses of the ones that didn't make it, but there were sure a lot of them around making it, including the babies. So that was fun.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Sometimes something hits me very hard, and then I'll say, I wonder whether there's a therapy issue for you.
I see.
Sometimes, essentially more from the reaction of the people. For instance, I was watching Mary here, and in fact, you brought in already your own reaction. You handled it. If, let's say, Mary had been reading that, and after reading it, or after hearing everything, she looked very depressed and demoralized, and sort of, sometimes, you know, I would wonder a little bit, and I might say, you know, I wonder whether you want to bring up this topic in therapy with a contract. Then it's got to be a very specific contract. and the contract would be, I wonder whether I have a message or a conclusion or something that life is awful and loss and so on. It doesn't sound like it at all here. You know, I might then suggest that a person might want to talk about something in therapy, but very careful. And then if the person says, yes, this is something, or they might say, that's a ridiculous idea that, you know.
Could I follow up with clarification? Then you call it a philosophy then, is that right? It would be a philosophy. These stories are emerging a philosophy, a worldview.
That's right.
Things like that.
That's right.
Thank you. Yeah,
Translated
because I was
in
I was sliding into that therapeutic
in
place.
yeah,
I don't want to do
different
that.
interpretations, yes. You know, the whole idea of working with script is still a work in progress. I mean, it's for many people still to work with it and to elaborate it and to understand it better, you see. And once we will have understood a little bit more how our mental processes connect with memory, how it ties in with trauma. And so, you know, and in the course of all that, people have all these life experiences. And sometimes then their approach ties in. But for instance, one would guess with your kind of script, that if you had been as a little girl or as a young woman before you work now, in a crisis situation, you probably would have handled it well. One can hear that she would see that this can happen, this can be very awful, but she would try to navigate. She has the observing aspect of it, you know? So in that sense, but then life brings in. You know, that's why then I'm interested very much how people deal with trauma and loss, which you can't predict. And this is a very important topic for us now, you know, soldiers coming back from the war. And in my article, which you can read, Trauma and Resilience, the whole topic of resilience is being talked about a lot now. And in my article, I compare the story of one service person who comes from the war, and then he's in a difficult situation, and he hasn't had strokes, he hasn't had support, but he reacts and he shoots, okay. And I compare it with the story of Viktor Frankl, who by rights should have ended up terribly. He was in concentration camps and so on, but he was dealing with a certain, his script from the beginning. He was going to write an important piece of work and affect people. And boy, the concentration camp didn't stop that. And he comes out and he does that, you know? So Viktor Frankl, in his theory, in his therapy theory, logotherapy, he emphasizes a lot that meaning, and Jim Allen talks a lot about meaning. And I think that the script work ties in with some of these theories about meaning. It's what meaning we develop in life. And that does start out of childhood, the views. And then it does get affected and changed and modulated. But there are elements we use, it's almost like saying we develop the clay, we build it on top of something. Or you have this building here. It started out, what is it, in 1600, and now they've added these different windows and stuff, but it still has the characteristic of whatever it started out with, although the windows are very different now against the noise in my room. You can't open it anymore. Okay.
Okay, my first story.
Ice cream cone.
Okay, the first story is Goldilocks and the Three Bears.
You didn't hear her. Goldilocks.
Goldilocks and the Three Bears. She finds a warm bowl of oatmeal and a comfy chair that breaks, and a comfy bed she rests until she is disturbed by Baby Bear. She is frightened and runs.
Mm-hmm. Okay. You notice whenever we get like that, how many versions one can have of a story like that. I think I mentioned that before. I do that once. It's fun to do. That you can do in a whole group just for fun. Assign a story I did with Little Red Riding Hood, and it's wonderful how everybody had a different one. And one person, I'll never forget, sometimes it tells you, I'm interrupting a little bit, but sometimes it tells you something in a different way. One person, she gave the whole story of Little Red Riding Hood and forgot about Little Red Riding Hood. She forgot Little Red Riding Hood. She described the wolf, the bear, everybody. She forgot Little Red Riding Hood. Well, that told her something about her, and told her something about her, too. Okay, here we go.
Okay, the adult story is from a book, The Wedding. A mother.
I'm going to call it the grown-up story,
Okay.
rather than adult story.
Okay, the grown-up story. A mother feeling alone. All of her children have moved out and become adults. She and her spouse are living separate lives.
I'm sorry. Would you start slower and louder? Because I
Okay.
can't hear you. You can't.
Okay. A mother feeling alone. All of her children have moved out and become adults. She and her spouse are living separate lives. The spouse woos her, and they find each other again.
Who woos her? The spouse?
Yes.
Returns and woos her.
Yes.
Woos her again. Okay. Common denominators. Do you want her to read anything again?
I need the first story again.
Yeah, Goldilocks. Yeah. Right. And that's very good because we have to get her version and not everybody else. Not our own version, especially when it's a story we know. Okay. Ice cream cone.
She finds a warm bed. No, she finds a warm bowl of oatmeal and a comfy chair that breaks. And a comfy bed. She rests until she is disturbed by Baby Bear. She is frightened and runs.
Okay. Do you want to hear the last one again? Okay, the last one again.
A mother feeling alone. All of her children have moved out and become adults. She and her spouse are living separate lives. The spouse woos her, and they find each other again.
Okay? That's hard. You have to work a little bit to find common denominators.
Common denominator.
Yeah.
The woman, it's a woman. They're both women.
Both women.
Yes, and I think that's all. They're both women.
Both female, anyway.
Yeah, females.
Yeah.
Common denominators, they're both about families.
What I was picking up was on the word find. The word find. Little Bear finds her and she runs away. And when the spouse woos her, they find each other again.
Exactly. So it's a separation and a reunion under different circumstances. The circumstances have changed. The two finds also. She finds the oatmeal and the place. Okay, you find also. And the family, you talked about that. And there's the other thing is the status quo is disturbed in both cases. Not necessarily badly. In the first case, the little bear disturbs her, but we don't know. It may be okay. Yeah.
The female protagonist in each of the story is basically alone. The mother, her children have moved away, and her husband's living a life without her. And here's Goldilocks in the house by herself. Everyone's gone.
And she gets, however, somebody arrives. The spouse was gone and arrives. Who was there, by the way, he returns because the little bear was there way back before Goldilocks was there, has come back, and the spouse comes back perhaps disturbs her comfortable solitude. This is my interpretation, but not necessarily. Just as we don't know, maybe the little bear comes in and Goldilocks is happy to find him. He comes back. At any rate, the little bear comes back and disturbs her, and the spouse comes back and disturbs her, let's hope positively. And we don't know we don't know about the disturbance really. We don't know about the connection, whether it's a good connection or not. Presumably in this last one it's a good connection, since he's come back. And yes, the last line was they're happy. Yeah, what the last?
Yes, the last line of the Goldilocks is.
No, of the spouse.
Okay, the other one, the spouse woos her and they find each other.
And they find each other. Okay, but you're right about finding each other. Yeah. Okay. All right. Any other common denominators or strong contrasts?
This might be a stretch, but the Goldilocks around the porridge is nurturance, and there's nurturance in the love in the second story. Now,
That's right.
contrast is the bear doesn't woo Goldilocks.
Doesn't
The
what?
husband does.
Well, maybe the little bear would like to woo Goldilocks, but she gets frightened and runs away.
That's right.
Contrast is in the three bears, the comfy or comfort versus in the adult story, grown-up story, the fact that they're living parallel lives.
Mm-hmm. Very interesting. Parallel lives. Though somehow they find a way of connecting. They're very parallel, yeah, sort of, very different and gone for different reasons, yeah. Okay. Any more? So let's get your adolescent story. About what age?
A young adolescent.
Young adolescent.
This comes from the movie The Way We Were. A girl,
Ice cream.
okay, a girl looks in from afar, loves from afar, gets a boy, and is very happy. In an unreal place, a crisis, real life happens. She finds she does not belong, loses her first love. She is alone, but goes on with her life.
Where? Okay. No? Common denominators or differences?
Yeah, I was going to pick it up from the
Uh-huh.
the first and the third. In
Yeah.
every story, there's lots of feelings. So some stories are full of thinking, some are full of doing. Yours are full of feelings.
That's right. Very strong and running through. And by the way, what you really, I like to point out, here we only have two examples. We might have a third, but different again. Usually in a script workshop, we hear 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Sometimes we subgroup. And people really dawns on people how different people are. So it's amazing the common denominators in one person. And at the same time, you couldn't replace them. You couldn't take the story of one person, the third story or the fourth or the second, and put it, you couldn't scramble them up and do them. They all have, each set has its own coherence, which to me is wonderful and amazing, which shows that each one of us has our own, can I say, fingerprint. We're all alike, but we each have our individual fingerprint. Each one is different. And my fingerprint will never be exactly like yours, though there may be similarities that the FBI might find.
So a similarity that I was observing between all three stories, it's the alone, mother alone, girl loves from afar, Goldilocks alone in the house. And in each story there's an event. Little bear shows up, the spouse loves, woos, and in the third one, there's a crisis. So in each case, there is some disturbance.
Mm-hmm. And you see, I don't know you at all. And so it's more comfortable for me to say that than if I know the person. So one can already see, for instance, how as a young child you dealt with the topic of alone. And we don't know how, why, what. And again, we're not talking pathology, we're talking normal life. And so we're talking normal creative life. Actually, her first story, Goldilocks, is doing very well alone. She finds the way of fitting, she finds the oatmeal, which ain't so good, and she finds trying to settle her chair. So we see from your story, for instance, illustrates what I'm talking about, how the early story, and it's true of everybody's first story, is grappling with these circumstances in which a 4 or 5-year-old child finds herself. But that does not mean the negative implication that Byrne gives. Therefore, you are programmed for life and you will not be able to get out of it. Not at all. You're programmed to be able to deal with certain issues that you have already had to deal with. At 4 and 5, you already had to deal with some. And you are juggling with how you're going to deal with them. And as you evolve, you have your themes back again, and you are also developing themes that are important for you in your life. And that are, again, half full, the glass is half full, half empty. You keep checking that out each time. All right. Would you mind reading that third story again? Because I have sort of forgotten a little bit with all my talk.
The adolescent story?
The adolescent story, yeah. I'm sorry, I call it the third because I'm used to thinking of 4 stories, yeah. Ice cream and loud, yeah.
A girl looks in from afar, loves from afar, gets the boy, is very happy in an unreal place. Crisis. Real life happens. She finds she does not belong. Loses her first love. She is alone, but goes on with her life.
The last lines are what? I'm sorry.
She is alone, but goes on with her life.
She is alone, but goes on with her life. So in this story, she's alone, but goes on with her life. In the 4th story, she's alone and not having to be alone. In both stories, she goes on with her life in different ways, one way or the other. The whole topic of alone and with someone is the someone arriving positive or negative, we do not know. It can be good, it can be bad. Again, very typical of script stories, yes?
Yes, and what you're saying is also what I had heard. Each of these stories contains a female who's independent and doing okay. And in the adult version, something happier comes along. But for Goldilocks, maybe it's something happier for her to be away from the bear.
Yeah.
But each of these is someone able to take care of themselves.
Yeah.
At the same time, a comment is the female is passive. Goldilocks is there by herself, and then the action happens on her. The adolescent story.
Wait a second, she's not that passive. She checks out these chairs and chooses within that context.
I mean, in terms of what happens in her life thereafter.
Yeah, but she does make choices. She
She does make choices. Okay, I might be a little loose with the term passive. The second one was she was acted on by the bear. The bear came in, and that is what made her decision. The second one, she's loving at afar, and she doesn't say how the boy came into her life, but the boy came in, and that then caused an opportunity for choice. But there's an unrealness there. That's a contrast to the fright of Goldilocks. And then the third one, everybody's left her, and it's she's acted on by the former husband who comes back, and
when he comes back.
yeah.
So circumstances. In both in the third and fourth, she deals with life circumstances outside. I'm not sure passive is quite the word, but dealing with situations outside her control, maybe. The children leave the house and the husband comes back. It's outside her control. With Goldilocks also, it's outside her control, but she then acts in it. She comes in that house and she chooses her, Goldilocks does, and the other one has decided how she's going to live alone and so on. Yeah?
She chooses life.
She chooses life. There's a lot of choice, yeah.
When the bear frightens her, she doesn't let him paw her to death.
Mm-hmm.
She gets up and runs away to be safe. That's the way I see it.
Is that what happens with the bear
The
comes
little
in?
bear came in and frightened her.
And then what?
And she runs.
And she runs, so she
And
knows what to
gets
do.
out of the way, yeah.
Yeah.
And the second one, it starts out like with some kind of magic, and then you said real life happens. But she picks up the pieces and she goes on with her life. And then the third one, she could accept or reject the husband's wooing, but she decides to accept it. So that's what I see, is that she's very active in
That's
choosing
right.
life.
At any rate, what we get is the theme, the subject. Well, let's not forget what she's dealing with. This whole business is with separation and alone, managing separation and alone, experimenting this way and that way, and alone and then running away or not. And maybe the other way is, no, you don't have to run away, but you do it differently. So this is, again, developing. Script is also developing what you said, one's philosophy of life and one's approach to life, and how one is going to deal with it, and how one is going to make one's choices. Okay, any more? Yeah.
This is perhaps a variant of what's already been said, but it strikes me that in each of the stories, it has an, in quotes, happy ending in the sense that the problem gets solved. She runs away, which solves the problem. And I don't mean it as a problem in the sense that there is an issue.
The issue, maybe, the issue.
Yeah, so she deals with the issue in each case. And the thread that I see running through it is perhaps the phrase "life goes on," or "life goes on the way she wants it to go on."
That's right. Okay, now your turn to give us some reactions, and also to tell us which story you prefer. I tend to do a lot more on that theme with people when we have more time. Which story you prefer between the third and the adolescent and the grown? They're very different. My experience in working with many, it's very different. Many people definitely prefer the last one. Other people definitely prefer the adolescent one. And it tells a lot. Again, it tells them a lot about themselves, which one they prefer. So here, before you say it, leaves me guessing. I can't guess which you're going to prefer.
Well, I prefer the last one.
You prefer the last one?
Yes, because, she's alone, but she finds love again. And therefore, she's not alone at the end.
Even though love comes from the outside. Whereas in the other one, you see, so that's it. In the adolescent one, in your adolescent one, it's very interesting, dealing with starting with Goldilocks. Goldilocks is perfectly happy alone. And then she gets disturbed, and then she runs away and she chooses again alone. But as time moves on, in her adolescence, she rebels against the alone. And then in the last one, she decides you don't have to be alone.
Right, right.
Which, and again, and sometimes we would get very parallel stories and similar stories, and you might get the other thing and says, hell no, I like the one I was rebelling, and I'm I've been changing my life. And so we are dealing in script work more and more. You can see that. I'm not denying that one works with changes of scripts and choices and possibly, but they're all from the person themselves looking at it. And we might, in a group discussing it like that, reinforce some things or point out that something, and then the person. And there's a lot happens in between and afterwards. And I've had people react, 2 years, 3 years later, and so on, saying, now I know. And actually, this was cooking, not as a result of doing this work, just this was cooking in me, and I can understand it better. So I don't know. Somebody has said to me, well, then what's the value of doing any of this work? Because you're not the work doesn't change anything. It's the people are doing all this changing themselves. And I say, I don't know what the value is, but people come to these workshops. It's curiosity, and it stimulates something or other. Do you have any more comments you want to make? Yeah.
Well, one of the things when I first did the exercise and looked at it, I saw it as very negative because there was so much aloneness. But after hearing y'all's comments, finding that, especially the choosing life and going on and surviving, so it made it turn out to be really positive. So, and thank you.
Thank you for volunteering.
Okay, the first one, the young one. The tortoise and the hare, in the race is begun. The hare runs off quickly. The turtle is slow and steady. The rabbit stops to play. The turtle keeps going slow and steady. The turtle wins the race.
Okay. All right, and now the last one.
Now,
you can make comments, yes, because you're in your second time. You're in your second turn, so you can. It's still the rules are different for you.
okay, I have to ask a question.
Yes.
The one that I did is a play that I saw a couple years ago, but it's a childhood play. Is that okay?
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
yeah, it could be. Oh, yes, it can be a few years ago. And in my case, suddenly I got a nursery rhyme a few years ago. And I said, oh, boy, that's that's my best story.
Okay, because this is a grown-up.
But keep that this way.
Okay. Peter Pan was a boy who lived in the world of make-believe. The Lost Boys fought Indians and pirates. Wendy flew to Never Never Land with Peter. Wendy would clean and read stories. Captain Hook captured Wendy, John, Michael, and the Lost Boys. Peter Pan rescues Wendy and the others. Captain Hook walks the plank to meet the crocodile with the clock. Peter Pan never grows up.
Oh, that's a long one. You got in oh, yeah, okay.
I got it.
You got everything in.
Quickly.
Okay. So the last line here is Peter Pan never grows up. Now the last line of the first story is the
turtle wins the race.
Yep. We're getting something there as a common denominator. I don't need to spell it out. Okay. Yeah, what you see?
I see competition in first story between turtle and a rabbit, and second it's also competition, but it seems like Peter Pan actually refuses to compete serious. He's playing.
Very good. So the subject matter is competition. Now we're getting a little more tightly thing here. So we get the script preoccupation is in competition. One can guess that she has siblings. Whether she does or she doesn't, I do not know. Really, I don't know. But I do not know whether they're younger or older either.
Older.
Okay, but it's not very hard to guess. But I mean, again, one has to restrain oneself. In this workshop, I don't have to restrain myself that much. But
Commonality around childlikeness in both stories. We didn't find a grown-up in the story or something like a grown-up.
Wait a second, Wendy is pretty grown up. Read that last one again. Wendy's a child, but she's, let's read the other, here, yeah.
Peter Pan was a boy who lived in the world of make-believe. The Lost Boys fought Indians and pirates. Wendy flew to Never Never
I'm
Land.
sorry, slower. The
Lost Boys fought Indians and pirates. Wendy flew to Never Never Land with Peter. Wendy would clean and read stories. Captain Hook captured Wendy, John, Michael, and the Lost Boys. Peter Pan rescues Wendy and the others. The Captain Hook walks the plank to meet the crocodile with the clock. Peter Pan never grows up.
Well, the only there is Captain Hook is a grown-up, but he walks the plank, and we thought the grown-up is eliminated, but there is a grown-up, and Peter Pan has made a definite choice, and Captain Hook has walked the plank, and we know.
I heard two things that were kind of common. I heard two things that were kind of common. One was the steadiness with the turtle, and then it sounded like Wendy was very steady, cleaning and reading stories. And the other thing was the playing and not growing up. You know, the hare didn't take the race very seriously.
That's right.
And played. And Peter Pan, not growing up.
So Peter Pan, in comparison to Captain Hook, Peter Pan does better than Captain Hook, for sure. And the hare does better than the hare, whatever. You get the idea.
So I can see the point of view that you have, and I was looking at it from a different point of view, and that was the analogy between, comparing the turtle and Peter Pan, in the sense of the turtle wins the race, Peter Pan never grows up, and I'm wondering if there is a relationship between there.
Well, it's for you to answer your own question, because she's not allowed to answer it right now.
The relationship I see is that the energy, the strength was in the Peter Pan does not grow up, and the energy was in the turtle wins the race.
So it's in letting go, being slow, in not pushing, in not competing. The Athenian philosophy there is you're better off taking it easy and going slow. And Peter Pan also. Look at Captain Hook, who allegedly is supposed to win the race. What does he do? He walks the plank. He doesn't win the race at all. Am I making the point with you or not? There's something else you've got there.
It's similar.
You're looking for something else. The moral of the story, I think you're looking for the moral of the story.
Am I allowed to say anything?
Yes, because it's your second turn, yeah.
What I'm hearing Ravi say is that the turtle going slow wins, and as a positive. What I'm also hearing you say is that Peter Pan never growing up is like winning also.
Yes.
Am I getting you?
Well, does that correspond to a little bit of a view of life?
Of course. Oh, you don't need this. Of course it does.
Okay.
I was listening and thought about the turtle depends only upon herself, and she crosses the line, she wins. But Peter Pan well, I guess he wasn't active because he went and gets Wendy, I think you said. So he goes and gets himself Wendy to take care of himself, so he doesn't need to take care of himself. He goes and gets Wendy to take care of him, so he doesn't need to take care of himself. But so in a sense, he's also independent in winning.
By taking it easy. The moral here, we get a very strong moral of the story. Moral of the story is don't push, don't Don't rush.
I like that.
It's not how we know Suzanne, but that we are not trying to get a diagnosis of Suzanne. I mean, from what I know of Suzanne, I wouldn't say that at all about Suzanne, but nevertheless, this is in her script.
She's moving there, I will say.
She believes in it. Okay. Any other comments? Let's get to the third story and then the comparison, because in your case I'm rushing it a bit, but also,
Okay.
yeah.
Like you say, this
Yeah.
is my second time.
Yeah.
Okay, my adolescent story is a movie. Liza Doolittle was a flower girl selling flowers on the street. The professor and his friend made a bet about making her a lady. Liza worked hard to learn to act and speak correctly. The professor took credit when she was the star at the ball. Liza was angry that she was not given any credit. Liza determined she would be a teacher. Liza was loved by Freddie, but she loved the professor.
Okay.
Liza was loved by Freddie, but she loved the professor.
So this is a real example of what I was talking about, that adolescence there's the struggle with this philosophy of life, which we will see later on coming back again. The basic script philosophy of life is take it easy, go slow, you'll get there. And this lies in there, in her, I will say, belief system, which she's confirming now by nodding actively and energetically about. This is her belief system. It doesn't necessarily tell us how she has functioned, but we certainly tell us her script, what she believes is the right way to be. The other thing about script that I'm trying to give you is that this is what we believe is what my life is going to be like, and what the principles or the philosophy or where I'm going, and what's right for me, and how I'm going to get through my life in the best possible way, given that life is unpredictable and difficult and all these other circumstances, which all 4- and 5-year-olds knew already, because they've had plenty of frustrations already, even in the happiest families, and certainly most families are not. And by that time, lots of things have happened to all children that are not totally wonderful and not totally magic. So they're going to know how to use their magic. So now in this adolescent story, you see, the flower girl, Lisa, it's sort of secret there. It's hidden. The turtle is hidden. The turtle is the one who goes slow, right? It's hidden. The professor doesn't, it's not seen that she knows, and she knows how to get the race. But at the very end, she puts a doubt in. She throws something there. This is very interesting.
What I was picking up on was the contrast in the adolescent story, because in the contrast, she works very hard and the professor takes the credit, whereas in the other ones, the turtle goes steady and wins the race. And so it's the working hard and not getting the credit that I was picking up on.
Yes, and yet the story does end with it ends with frustration. In the story, she does not win because she loves the professor.
So the
one who's taken the credit.
I was picking up on the words where Freddie loves her and she loves the professor. Yeah. It wasn't clear. I did not read into the words that the professor loves her back. So it's to me the adolescent story seems to be the contrast where Eliza hasn't won. She has worked very hard, at least based on the words that I was hearing.
However, there's still something there in that adolescent story that's disturbing, because she ends up loving the person who's taken the credit for what she has, what she's got. So if you take the original script story, it's like the, which is the animal that runs fast? The turtle, no, the hare. So the turtle is still stuck with admiring the hare, with depending on the hare. It hasn't resolved. The adolescent story is struggling, and in the original childhood story, she's got it clear, which she also has clear later on in life, that you go at your own pace, and you don't have to push, and you don't have to grow up, and you can relate to people, and she has that right. But somehow in the course of her life, the adolescence, she doesn't believe that, which I think almost got the feeling in the here and now that Suzanne was reenacting that the same way, that she was agreeing that it's good to take it easy and not struggle, but she was agreeing with great energy and great push.
Well, I was seeing that could it be that the love of the professor was loving the fact that someone took some enhancement of elevating her quality of life, and that she could still be keeping the laid back of the flower girl,
Yeah.
and the potential came out that she loved and therefore embraced, and it took the
So
form
that's
of
a good point, though. She may, then she accepts that you saying that she accepts the fact that he was not, that he was getting the credit for her,
Yeah,
and she can
yeah, I
still
mean, 'cause
love
she
him.
was in a better
She
place.
accepts the
Yeah,
situation
right.
that this is so.
Yeah.
So what you're seeing is struggle in order to accept it.
yes.
I found out that in Adolescent story, it was a girl, and she was not happy in love. And last story was about boy who does not want to grow up. And I was thinking maybe because he's not happy in love.
He is happy in love. He lets Wendy do it. But
And it changes sex also. It's story and I mean in Adolescent story, girl is not happy in love, and in last story, it's not a girl, it's a boy. Like for me, Peter Pan, and maybe he doesn't want to grow up because he was not happy in adult love. That's why he wants to be a child.
that's an interesting point. Okay. Anybody else? I think in the interest of time, I'm going to ask you to react now, and to react not only to what you got now, but to react in terms of what you remember and your life story to the extent that you want to share it with us. I don't mean giving us your whole life story, but what we're hearing. Oh, I should ask you, which story do you prefer? The last one or the adolescent or the grown one?
I like the grown-up Peter Pan story.
You like it better. That is interesting. So that you have come back, in a way, to your basic philosophy of your basic script. So you're much more in tune with your basic than with everything you have tried to accomplish.
I do think that the adolescent script really is about struggle.
Yes.
And it really fits what you've said, that the adolescent story oftentimes indicates struggle.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, there is struggle in that story.
Mm-hmm.
And even though there's competition, in the grown-up story of Peter Pan,
And the first one.
and the first one, it's not, it doesn't seem to be a struggle to be in that competition.
Mm-hmm. How does your reaction now, knowing that you had a reaction in the past, or do you want to tell us anything that's come back to you from the other one? Any comments that you want to make, just free comments about the whole thing for you. Personal, though, in terms of what it says for you.
Well, the first one, I remembered the stories that I used, and I used 4 stories, and the four stories were the tortoise and the hare is the youngest one. The early childhood story that I used was Thumbelina, which again was about a struggle and being underground, and in the end living happily ever after. The adolescent story was again the Liza Doolittle with struggle again. The grown-up story that I used previously was the Laramie, the Laramie Project, is that the name of it, the play? Yes, that was the one that I had seen most recently. And so it was very much a struggle and very much grievous to me. So I think I was in a kind of a different place then than I am now, where I can be playful with Peter Pan and say, yes, there's a struggle, and it's still, life can be a struggle, life can be competition, but you can let go and, go slow and steady, which comes back to the first story, and it's all going to work out. Mm-hmm. So, that's what I remember of the first one. And in comparing this one, I think
and
that's
you
what you're
feel
asking.
comfortable with that?
Oh, yes, I feel very comfortable. I mean, it in no way takes away from the impact that the Laramie Project had on me, and yet it tells me it's still an awful story, but it's still a very powerful story because it's a true story. Mm-hmm. But the Peter Pan is it's the little kid in me coming out just having fun. Mm-hmm. I don't...
Allowing your child to be. Mm-hmm. So if we're going to use TA terminology, and it may be with TA that you were able to accept your basic philosophy a little better, or your basic way of being better, rather than taking the shoulds.
Yeah, and I know that in terms of philosophy, I still can get into competition, but it's not a life and death competition like the Laramie Project is a life and death. It's okay, I can do a good job in terms of competition if I need to, but it's not life and death, and I don't have to win.
And there's a lot of faith in your own aptitudes, your own abilities, because the turtle gets it, and Peter Pan manages anyway, even though not necessarily happy in love, however, manages in his own way. And you don't have to be Captain Hook and walk the plank.
No.
And, Captain Hook gets it all and then walks the plank. Well, thank you.
So, yeah, I think I've answered what
Yeah,
you wanted.
yeah, okay. My favorite way to close a workshop, and I would like to suggest that, if I may, and that's talking into the camera in a way, but you can talk into the camera, or you can turn to the camera, maybe each one. What I like is for each person, this end of the workshop, the evaluation. And rather than evaluate the workshop, I like to suggest evaluating for each one me. And I suggest, Julius Caesar was asked at the end of the Roman wars, or the wars, whatever, to give a report, and he said, Veni, vidi, vinci. I came, I saw, I won. And I suggest that, except that I changed the formula a little bit. I suggest that everybody considered what I came with, where I am now, or what I see or feel or think, whatever version you want. See, feel, think is your choices, all or none. or gain or whatever, whether you go intellectual or feeling or whatever, and where I'm going.
Hi, Fanita. I came with an open mind just to listen to you. And what I have now is I've learnt a very great deal in a short space of time, especially looking at whether something is internal or external, where's it coming from, and where are the resources. But the main thing I have now is the memory of a cuddle with you, and I'm going to take that with me because it was wonderful, you know. And where I'm going with this is I also believe in one of the ways to work with a script is to create an awareness you can make it better, and I think you've put that across wonderfully today, so thank you very much.
Hi, Fanita.
Hi.
Yeah. I came in having done workshops with you, and where I am now is that between the way you presented the material and what I took in, I have much greater, I'm clear on survival conclusions, scripts. I have a perspective on them that I really did not have before. And I see them, the relationship between them and how connected they are. And most of all, what's been fascinating is the examples and the work that people have done. And I'm not sure where I'm going to go with this, but I will certainly integrate it into the way I live. And at times, I've been in script workshops with the old notion of script, where the sense was, well, what is my script? Something to be found. And what I'm leaving with is, or where I'm going is, that script is not something to be found, it's something to be made and evolved as I go along. So, thank you.
Well, I don't know exactly what I want to say here. I came really, Fanita, to find out more about how you did workshops and so forth, and I've enjoyed listening to it. I enjoyed seeing the afternoon one where there's more interaction with other people. I don't really like much teaching workshops, just lecturing, but I have really picked up a lot about the difference between the way you look at scripts at this point and the way and what you meant by episcripts, which I had never really understood before. I really am glad to have picked up that difference and understand more what you're driving at with them. But the other thing I want to say is that I've enjoyed, in the intervals, meeting some of the people here. It's been important for me, and I had a nice discussion this morning in the Gap this morning with Mark, and I met several of the people and had a very nice time at lunch, and I feel very comfortable, and I'm going to enjoy the rest of the week.
Good.
Fanita, you are absolutely a delight.
Thank you.
I love your energy, and I came to the workshop knowing that whatever I got out of the workshop would be wonderful and that I would love the energy and being with you, and I have certainly come with an open mind to learn. And I, like Ravi, have put it together better after today than any other time of the difference in script and how we are creating our script and how it is like improv theater where we're just creating. And I have learned also today about the Episcript in a way that I've never known before. And your technique for dealing with script not as therapy but as education and learning about yourself is something that is exciting to use as I go back to my practice. And also it's exciting to me personally to know that I'm in an okay place with my script, and I can create and be fun and be competitive and be happy and be playful, and it doesn't have to be a downer. So I'm happy I came. I learned a lot, and I go away excited at having been here.
Thank you.
I don't know how to follow her. I also enjoyed being here this afternoon, and I came in with a fixed idea of script, and that it was sort of fixed, and that it's just helpful to know what it is and what that pitfall is. And I'm leaving with a much more expanded idea of script, and the fact that it isn't fixed, it's fluid, and that we can change it if we want, and that it's more of a instructive awareness of how we're living and what we might do to improve or to make our lives happier. So I really appreciate it, and I knew it was going to be good because I didn't know what an Episcript was either. And so now I have a better idea, and I know there's plenty more to learn. So I'm leaving here kind of excited and with a little different slant as to how I use it in therapy with people. Not as therapy, but as education.
Hi. I came here with having read a lot and thought a lot and had, some clarity, but I have a lot more clarity now, and especially just really clear the distinction between the survival conclusions and the script and the episcript, and I found especially valuable the analogy of the episcript being the cancer that can then look like the script, and
invade the script sometimes.
Yeah, that
Sometimes
can invade it.
So sometimes indeed it becomes the script, but that's because the cancer's there.
Because it's
Yeah.
taken over. Right. And where I'm going is to go back and think about all of this more. I feel like I've got so much scope now to think through and integrate it for myself and apply it in different ways for my clients and personally. And I do like a teaching workshop, and you did a magnificent teaching workshop. So I really appreciate the clarity and the smoothness and the keeping on track and the just bringing in enough examples and enough theory to tie the whole thing together. So thank you.
Thank you.
Well, Fanita, I came inside tight, analytical, kind of given to memory of protocol in terms of how I do therapy with folks or how I interact transactionally, and that's been released for me. I really have gained a great deal in understanding scripts and its positiveness, and how I'm actually can live into my own now with affirmation instead of having it only coming from early childhood decisions. And at the same time have the notion of the episcript, which takes into account the harmful within me or my clients, the interruptions of the positive regard that I might have for myself. That I appreciate and really thank you. I feel freer, more loving, and it's been wonderful. Thank you.
So that's where you're going.
I'm going there, yes, that's right.
Okay.
And I'll be applying this in non-therapeutic contracts because I do this work at TA also in education and organization development. So I'm able to introduce these ideas and suggestions and methods without having to get into the person being there because they want symptom release. And
That's right.
symptom relief.
Which the other would be contract. yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
I came with the notion that it's very important to look at scripts in therapy and that they're negative, and I certainly have changed my views about that we don't really need to look at scripts at all, to leave them alone, and to really focus on hot potatoes and helping people smush the potato We don't want to pass it, but to get rid of the potato that has been given to them, and I really appreciate it. It has been wonderful, and also taking away that no matter what, I'm going to be okay.
Very good. Yeah. Eddie. Okay.
I came here with curiosity that how it can be that script will be okay and you don't need to change it. And at the same time, I never actually believed that somebody can change script and then live all right all his life. So I could not believe in it. So I probably really wanted to hear your point of view. And I'm happy to see you, just, to be with you in the workshop. Thank you.
And enjoyed having you all the way from Ukraine. So we're very flattered you did that.
And now I feel a big amount of energy inside that I can do something now.
Great.
Go forward.
Great.
Work more. And also what I'm taking with me probably just this joy that I was here with different people with different scripts and with more resources, very much resources. So very resourceful group. So thank you, thank you.
Thank you. For me, the subject of script and switching from the overly simplistic idea of script, and we get the chart, and we get the diagrams, and we get all the listing, and all these lists, all these kind of things, and then you come up with a script. It drives me nuts. It scares me. It angers me. It's a very passionate thing for me. How distorted the script idea has become, and it was not Burns' idea. He was playing with the script idea, but he was not that firm about it. And it's become, and when I hear somebody saying, I'm getting them out of the script, or that person finally is script free, it becomes a political thing, a passion thing. I really feel very strongly about that. I don't care so much, and that's why I'm glad that you understand, because indeed sometimes people will pick up something that's episcript or hot potato, and then they think it's script, and then the person gets into a terrified situation. And that's originally the first way I got so scared about the misuse of script was actually paradoxically 30 years ago in India, where we were invited for the first TA conference there, which turned out to be not a conference but really a lecture. There were 4 of us. It was Jack Doucet and Steve Kaufman. I don't know Jack Doucet, maybe Jack. Anyway, Steve Kaufman, Mary Bolton, and myself. It was 4 of us, I think Jack. Anyway, 3 men, and Mary Bolton and myself as 2 women and 2 men. And we were there, and there's this huge group of people there sitting in rows and ready to get all our wisdom about TA. And I had to go to the ladies' room before starting. And it was at the Taj Mahal Hotel in Mumbai, which is a very elegant hotel. And so I went to, and the first entrance to the ladies' room was a room almost as big as this one, very elegant room. And there is a row of ladies sitting around, very beautifully dressed. And I went past, and then I went on. And then as I came back through these series of rooms until I went to the bathroom finally, come back, and they're still sitting around. So I wondered, what are these women doing in there? Why are they just sitting around there? And so I indiscreetly asked them, and they said, well, we're here because our husbands are attending a script workshop. They didn't know about a script workshop over in the other room, and it's expensive, and so one member of the family is paid to go, so I didn't realize it was all men when I first looked at the audience, but I realized afterwards, it was all men, and our husbands are attending. I mean, there was a smaller group, there were many more men, and here there was 20 women, so, I mean, half of us. So, and then our husbands will teach us about it. And I said, well, are you interested in TA? And they said, yes, we've read. And they turned out they had read, they were very well read, they knew about you and so on. I said, well, and what is it about TA that interests you the most? Well, script. And one of them said, I feel so worried about the messages, the bad messages, the way I'm hurting my children. I'm giving them a bad script. And another woman said, I'm giving my child a bad script, and they were discussing. And their main purpose was to learn about script because so many of them felt that they were sure that they were giving their children a bad script, and the children were growing up with a bad script, and it was all going to be their fault, and now their husbands were going to tell them and instruct them how to change their own script and not give their children a bad script. And that scared me and angered me in the worst way. And so you can guess what the rest of it that happened was, and it was also as a feminist, you can understand also how I felt about that. So you guessed right that I went right back to the big room and I said, well, friends, there are 3 people to teach you what TA, and I am not teaching you TA. I'm going back to the ladies' room and I'm teaching script in there. So, and now since you won't have learned about script in this, because you're learning just about ego states and transactions in here, go back and learn from your wives about scripts. And that was my moment of triumph and my moment of fulfillment, you know, and I really felt so good. And that sort of started me on this kind of passion and concern that I wanted to teach people, at least to unteach bad things about script and to teach how exciting script and how I myself had learned indirectly from Byrne, and he saw a script as exciting. He was excited about script. He got messed up, as I said. Winners and losers and charts, and he was a great one for charts, and there was also a part of him that was very involved with trying to prove that he was a scientist. So you're going to write all these things down and with the check marks, and then sure enough, hallelujah, you got the script out and then you corrected. So there was a part of him that was going with that, but that was not all. I mean, Byrne was really a humanist, and he really would have appreciated this kind of work in this kind of way. So I do not feel I'm being disloyal to Byrne, but I sure am involved in campaigning against a simplistic view of script. Mary and I were very fond of each other. I met her first in Carmel when I came as a first student, and she was Mary Edwards at that time, and we palled up a lot and walked a lot. And in the last years, she and I were again very friendly. We did not always agree. And now I will put one more, I don't know, I have another minute on camera, because it's such a touching story, maybe about Mary and myself, since this is a redecision conference. I'd like to say that it was in Aruba at a TA conference, and we had a big breakfast, and Marian was sitting at one end and I was sitting at another, and we had kind of an excited discussion about redecision and injunctions and everything else, and we had a wonderful time talking about all that. And then afterwards I saw one of the people at the table, and she said, gee, it was so difficult sitting at that table and hearing how Mary and you were quarreling all the time and fighting. And I said, oh, I didn't know we were fighting and quarreling. I thought we were having a good time, but maybe I'm wrong. So I went to Mary and said, Mary, were we fighting and quarreling? She looked at me, she says, whatever gave you that idea? I said, well, somebody thought that we were fighting and quarreling. So neither Mary nor I thought that we were fighting and quarreling and competing and all these other things. We had a great time. But apparently it sounded like fighting and quarreling and competing to everybody else. So I leave you with that word, but Mary and I got it all right together. And I feel great about redecision and all that she has contributed. So thank you again. And thank you, Mary, and Mary's memory is through. I did not mention her, and I want to honor her with that too. Okay.